I'd like to call the meeting to order. Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for being here to the Committee on Ordinance public hearing. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Chairman Espinal,
Present.
Vice Chairwoman Peterson,
Present.
Councilwoman Harris,
Present.
Councilman Vargas is absent, Councilor Royas.
Present.
You have 4 present and 1 absent. You have a quorum.
Thank you so much. If you are here to speak and you have not had an opportunity to sign up, you can still do that. Thanks again for being here. Okay, Madam Clerk, we have an exhibit. So I'll entertain a motion to enter into the record Exhibit B.
So moved.
Motion is made by Councilwoman Peterson. And it's second by Councilman Roy. All in favor, aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. Thank you. So again, thank you so much for being here. It's such an important moment that we have here as we continue to put together the comprehensive plan, which will lay out the roadmap for the development within the city for the next 10 years. So I feel that is a critical time. So I'm glad that everyone is here. Tonight we're also joined by Councilwoman Anthea Graves, Councilwoman Anthony, Councilman Miguel Sanchez, Councilwoman Enderbois, also members of the Planning Department, as well as Sid Solicitor and our Chief of Staff and our policy team. Thank you all for being here. Councilman Goncalves as well, thank you so much. So we're gonna start out by a brief description as to what we've been doing, where we are today. And for that, I'll call upon Mr. Bob Asa from the Department of Planning. Mr. Asa, it's all yours. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. My name is Robert Azar. I'm the Deputy Director of the Department of Planning and Development. It's a privilege to be in front of you tonight with this draft comprehensive plan. It's been a long road to get here tonight, and we're excited to see such a great turnout by the public and members of the council to hear about people's impressions of this draft. I'm just going to briefly give you an overview of how we got here and then describe a couple of little features of the plan before we turn it over to public comment. We've been working at this since about 2022 when we first started our public engagement. In 2023, we ramped it up into various methods of participation. We used online, in-person, large group, small group discussions. We were out in the neighborhoods and out in all 15 of the wards, engaging with the public and learning about how people view the city, the strengths, the weaknesses, the things that we need, the things that we could do better. In 2024, we started producing draft elements of the plan. We solicited feedback and we brought it into the City Plan Commission for the statutory required review by our local planning board. We had regular and special meetings in February through May of 2024, and this was a constantly an iterative process where we took comment and updated the plan accordingly. We also heard extensively from the city council members who have been partners with us since the beginning. The City Plan Commission approved the plan in June of this year unanimously, and they have now forwarded it to you. There has been 3 weeks of advertising as required by statute, and that brings us here tonight, actually following one informational session that we had with this body last week. So just to talk a little bit about what this plan is, we consider this to be a roadmap for sustainable growth for Providence for the next decade. The plan envisions a Providence where everyone can find a home, can have a job, raise a family, and reach their fullest potential. This plan contains forward-looking policies that address climate change, economic development, transportation, city services, and much more. Importantly, this plan proposes bold and thoughtful solutions to the housing crisis by making it easier to build housing types that we know and love, while also investing in affordable housing and improving design standards. We're looking forward to hearing public comment tonight. My colleague Tim Shea and I will be listening carefully and taking notes. We've heard from many people since this draft has been approved, including many of you, about what you would like to see changed, and we already have a running list of potential amendments to the draft plan. We expect that following public comment tonight, you will continue this hearing to a date certain so that we can have a little bit of time to consolidate the comments, come back to you with proposed changes.
Yes.
And last, I would just request maybe a minute or two following the public comment to just sort of wrap up and maybe address some of the questions that might have come up tonight. Thank you.
Appreciate it, Mr. Hayes. Thank you so much. Okay, with that, we're going to go to the public. City Sergeant, could you please bring me the sign-up sheet? Thank you. Okay, so the first one on the list, and everyone will get 2 minutes, and I will hold it to 2 minutes because we do have a large number of people that want to be heard, and we want to hear from everyone. Mr. Grant Dugarian. Good evening, Grant.
Good evening, Grant Bulgarian, 20 Exeter Street in Providence. My recommendation to the City Council is to send this plan back to the City Planning Commission, tell the City Planning Commission to do its job. What's the matter? Okay, I'm right. Oh, sorry.
Much better, much better.
Oh, sorry, I don't mean to yell or shout. The City Planning Commission did not do what I requested at the very outset of this process, which was hold one public hearing on each section of the plan so people could give detailed responses to that section. They didn't do that. They didn't want to do that. They wanted superficial comments, and that was that. That's not the way it ought to work, and I'm not suggesting you guys do it because you have enough things to work on, including the city budget. Tell the City Planning Commission to do its job. Send it back to the Planning Commission. Excuse me. The City Planning Commission made amendments after they closed the public hearing and then didn't allow people to comment on their amendments. That's not the way it's supposed to work. That's not the way you guys work. Why is the City Planning Commission allowed to do it that way? They have nice objectives in this plan, but they don't talk about specifics of how they're getting there. Let's talk about 3 different areas. Number 1, housing. We were a city in 1950 of 250,000 people. In 20 years, we lost 40% of our population. We didn't slice and dice the existing residential neighborhoods. So why are we proposing to do that now? There's no justification for that. What I asked the City Plan Commission to do was to get maps of the city organized by census tract indicating what the population was in 1950 and what the population is now. We've gained some population back, not much. And also a map of the city organized by census tracts of what the number of dwelling units per census tract were in 1950 and what they are now. They refuse to do that. I'm a firm believer the more information we have, better decisions we make. We need to know where we were so we can plot a course of action to get to where we want to be.
30 seconds, Mr. You got about 30
All right.
seconds. All right.
Previous city council, when they had public hearings, allowed people to speak and then sit down, and if they have more to say, they would come back after everyone else got a chance to speak one time. They could come back for a second time. So I would encourage the city council to do the same thing. The recycling, we talk about the fact that Providence's recycling rate is dismal, but do we talk about how we can improve that situation? No. There are specific recommendations that we could do, easy, no cost. We don't talk about that. Transportation, we talk about we want mobility. Does the city of Providence do diddly squat as far as supporting the operation of RIPTA? No. In fact, they do the exact opposite.
All right, Grant, thank you so much. You can always come back on October 2nd. This will be continued. So let's hold it here 2 minutes. You can always come back on October 2nd. Thank you so much. Justin Baptista.
Hello.
Good evening.
Yes. It is my opinion that the latest comprehensive plan needs revision in the area of upzoning. Upzoning, as proposed by those who made the plan, is upzoning to its extreme. Out of control with little to no regard for their disruptive impact on neighborhoods. Proposed upzoning lacks the following: not enough protection for historic provision against demolition, expanding historic district protection to include key landmarks and buildings, strict standards to ensure new developments fit a neighborhood's external design, centering on areas with the most amount of space for development in terms of empty lots and abandoned buildings suited for adaptive reuse like downtown Providence, requirement for all new residential buildings to feature affordable housing for those who make minimum wage and less, who are the most affected by the housing crisis. Affordable housing tax incentives, transit-friendly standards for developments, balance of growth with increasing the tax base for preserving neighborhoods. If measures such as these are not codified or implemented, the comprehensive plan will fail to solve the housing crisis. It will only make the problem worse for those affected. There is no guarantee that more housing will lower prices in the area. Adding more houses would likely increase the market rate. Long-term residents would be displaced in growing numbers. You can't put out a fire by pouring gasoline into it.
You got about 20 seconds.
You also can't put out a fire by trying to change what shape it is in. The comprehensive plan is supposed to be for Providence. Tearing down what makes Providence unique goes against it. Historic buildings must be protected for as long as they can be preserved. Neighborhoods for Fox Point must be protected from the dangers of demolition and overdevelopment. When I say protected, I mean all that is required, not the bare minimum. For instance, a historic district overlay for the Fox Point Wickenden area. Neighborhoods with historic buildings need more of a voice in the future of those buildings. There is no progress without them.
Thank you, Mr. Baptista.
Just another city like any other. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Dorothy Hectington, I believe. Sorry.
It's pronounced Tetherington, sorry.
Hi.
Good
Good evening.
Good evening. I'm here to oppose section mobility objective 1, page 37, line N, that supports the removal of RIPTA's bus hub right behind you from downtown Providence. The removal of the bus hub would affect tons of Providence City Council's residents. It would cost the taxpayer an estimated $200 to $250 million to just move the bus hub, and that would be on the taxpayers. And I actually feel bad for the city council because you all passed this unanimously back in May, a resolution against the removal of RIPTA's bus hub from downtown Providence, and this line somehow made it into the comprehensive plan. You're being undermined. That's sad. I would like this line to be removed, and I would also urge the council to ask why it was added to the comprehensive plan when you've all passed a resolution against the removal of RIPTA from downtown Providence. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Lorraine Savard.
Good evening.
Good evening, Lorraine.
My name is Lorraine Savard. I am part of the Kennedy Plaza Resilience Coalition. And there's one thing, just one thing that I'm opposed to, as Dorothy just mentioned, and that is a section on mobility, Objective M1, buses, page 37, line N, which is in favor of moving the bus hub from Kennedy Plaza to some unknown location. So I have something written here, and hopefully it's within the 2-minute limit.
You got about a minute and a half.
A minute and a half. I think I can do it.
Okay.
There are so many wrongs about the proposed Kennedy Plaza move, not the least of which is the exorbitant amount of money proposed to be spent. Just look at the remaining bond money passed years ago, that is $16 million, that is being spent on the idea of the Kennedy Plaza move. What has been gained by this spending? Friends, quote unquote, made a lot of money, and other things, but one that I just recently became aware of, surveys with loaded questions. Moving forward, if half the $200 million price tag were to be spent on truly renovating Kennedy Plaza,
10 seconds, Lorraine.
we
Sorry.
would save money and greatly enhance what has worked for RIPTA's hub for almost a century.
Thank you so much, Lorraine.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. And don't forget, again, there will be another public hearing October 2nd at 5:30. In case you cannot get all your testimony in today, you can always come back. Okay, next we have Diane Librendi.
Thank you very much for letting me speak today.
Absolutely.
My name is Diane Labrandy. I have lived in the city of Providence for 55 years. Of those 55 years, 45 years I've been a property owner, and I still am. Up until maybe about 2.5, 3 months ago, I used to drive a car, and I used to get everywhere I wanted to with my car. I no longer have a car, and I no longer drive. So basically, I depend on the buses. I depend on the buses like I did when I was a little girl growing up in Cranston, Rhode Island, and my parents did not have a car, and we used to take the bus down into the city to the downtown area. Everything was here. Everything is here right now in Kennedy Plaza. We do not need to move it outside of Kennedy Plaza. I have my bank over here that's right around the corner. I have my little cafes I go to right around the corner. And I have the City Hall, which I came in to vote on Tuesday because I moved my polling place over to Buckland Street when my regular polling place is right across the street from me at the school. And there's no bus that goes over to Buckland Street, so I could not get over there. I came over here and voted. I had to go in the lift in the back, which is not working today for the handicapped people, with my walker, and this generous guy, he helped me out, and somebody helped me out today, and that was you.
Thank you so much.
Carrying my walker up here. So I just say, I cannot afford taxes to go up anymore. I think that they can fix up Kennedy Plaza. They can get the security in here and bring it back to the way it was when I was growing up as a little girl in Cranston, Rhode Island, and taking the bus everywhere because my parents didn't have a car and we lived on the bus line.
Thank you, Diane.
You're welcome.
Appreciate your time and your testimony. Greg from 37 6th Street. Oh, Greg Garrett. Good
Members
evening.
of the City Council, my name is Greg Garrett. I have a few quick points. I'm going to try to be very brief.
Okay.
First, save Kennedy Plaza as a bus hub. It's ridiculous to move it and a waste of money. Two, a lot of what is in this is about economic development. And I think that the city and the state and the federal government all miss the point. Economic development is a bottom-up process, not a top-down. All of our economic investments should be going into low-income neighborhoods to the people who live there, not giving money to rich people, and definitely not putting money into the medical industrial complex, because all that does is spur gentrification and make healthcare more unaffordable. I really liked the sustainability section, pages 7 through 13. It's got a lot of good stuff. I will say this, though, it does not go far enough. That if we are going to actually have an economy that works in this city, then we have to focus on climate justice. It's a climate justice economy. We have to get climate right. We have to get the justice part right in our economic development. One way that is expressed is we have these industrial zones, and the map shows all these new expanded industrial zones. And what we haven't done is figured out how to protect the health and well-being of the people who live next to the industrial zones.
30-second, Greg. Go ahead.
The industrial zones are the most polluted in the city. They need to be cleaner than the residential zones. So we need to focus on what's in those zones and how we clean them up. Because we have a massive asthma problem, we need to make sure that the people who live next to the industrial zones are in clean air. I mean, we've always had this problem. You go to the Buckland Street area and there's factories and there's houses. We know that that's happening now. What we need to do is figure out how to make sure that the kids who live next to industrial zones don't get asthma.
Thank you so much, Greg. Richard, 235 Promenade. Good evening, Richard.
Good evening. Thank you very much. My name is Richard Stang. I'm with the Conservation Law Foundation in the Providence office. I have two specific changes that I would request for the comprehensive plan. One is on page 37. It's strategy N. Delete it, or at least change it to say, support RIPTA in its process to establish Kennedy Plaza as a world-class transit center. The second change is with regards to the industrial zoning that will continue along Allens Avenue in the greater Port of Providence. Specifically, It states on the strategize to prioritize clean and sustainable resilient economic development. That should be changed to ensure clean and sustainable. And how do you do that? Well, you can take language from the Green Justice Zone Act or the Environmental Justice Act that didn't pass, and specifically give the people from that community, the economic justice community, not only a seat at the table, but decision-making table. You could create another overlay district specifically which allows the people to vote on whether they want a new use there, that they do, on whether they think if it's appropriate or not. And then if they allow the use, they have the right to have a community development agreement that they can negotiate for purposes of beautifying the area. At CLF, we're more than happy to work with you on the specific wording that would go into that statute. I welcome you.
30 seconds, Richard.
That's all I have to say. Thank you very
Oh,
much.
thank you so much. Thank you for your testimony. Steve Alquist. Good evening.
Hi, my name is Steve Alquist. I live on the east side. Environmental justice is the point of the spear when it comes to preventing climate change. We need to empower communities to reject industries that poison their children. Not so coincidentally, these industries also poison the world. Neighborhoods such as the east side have this power because they are richer and more politically connected than those who live around the port, for instance, where wealth and political power are more rare. That's why there are no scrap metal yards burning alongside Blackstone Boulevard, and this is not justice. Empowering communities to reject polluting industries, as Richard just said, is a must. The language around environmental justice and climate change in a comp plan needs to be tightened. Remove the weasel words. These allow for exceptions when money is to be made or when a former mayor decides what's best for us. Tightening the language and preventing abuses might be impossible. The lawyers of rich people are creative and crafty, but why make it easy for them? Here's a thought. No more fossil fuel development of any kind in Providence. We are going to do this eventually. Let's make history and do it now in this plan. We have a chance to create a comp plan that serves people. The term sustainable, which I heard at the beginning of this presentation, the term sustainable growth has the word sustainable in it, but the same old is not sustainable. It is a disaster in the making, and we can do better in Providence, and I would like to see us do better. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. Randall Rocks Roy. There you go. Good evening.
Good evening. My name is Randall Rose, and like a number of the other speakers, I'm asking you, I have no objection to most of this plan. I think it's fine, but I am asking you to delete the one line that says support RIPTA's process to move Kennedy Plaza. I'm a member of the Kennedy Plaza Resilience Coalition and Rhode Island Transit Riders. I'm speaking on behalf of the former group. We are asking all council members to support deleting that one line, which is thoroughly opposed to the resolution that was passed unanimously by the City Council back in May 16th. That resolution repeatedly condemned RIPTA's process and asked RIPTA to have listened to bus riders more. That resolution was delivered to RIPTA. RIPTA has completely ignored it, has done nothing to listen to bus riders. Even when they've promised to, they haven't fulfilled their promise. They have been simply thumbing their nose at this resolution. And this comprehensive plan says support that process. No, we should not. Kennedy Plaza is the best place to make connections. It's most conveniently located. It's the best place in Providence's street network, and most riders who go to Kennedy Plaza are going there because their destination is right next to Kennedy Plaza. Most people are not there to transfer. So if they can go to Kennedy Plaza, all the buses go there, they can get out in one trip, but if the bus hub was moved somewhere else, they have to make two trips. It's a lot less convenient. In the comprehensive
30-second, Rando.
In the comprehensive plan presentation that Bob Azar gave you, they did a survey, page 5. They said, and the survey came back, priority number 2, provide safe, convenient, affordable transportation options. That's what the survey of Providence residents said. Providence residents use bus transit at a higher rate than most other cities in the state. But the plan completely ignores that. It completely ignores all the soaring rhetoric. That one item that we're asking you to remove endorses RIPTA's flawed plan that will be super expensive.
Time is up, Randall. Thank
The
you.
cost is estimated at, yes.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Again, you can always come back on the 2nd of October. Thank you. At 109 Benefit Street.
You know, your sound system needs help. My name is Liz Rollins Moran. I'm president of the Mile of History Association, and thank you for this opportunity.
Good evening.
Good evening. I know there's tremendous pressure for development in this city, and the way that I can see that we achieve that happily as residents is the only route is a lot of adaptive reuse and really strict design review. We have tons of empty commercial space downtown, and that can be adaptively reused. And by adaptively reusing, we reduce the numbers of demolition. I hope that as a council, you will insist on the return of the historic tax credits and other incentives, and will enlarge the design review enforcement. I think by doing these things, we'll retain our quality of life and honor our diverse heritage. One thing that I didn't like in the built environment section, which I think is beautiful, is that we should replace the word should complement or enhance with the word must complement and enhance when dealing with historic properties and districts.
30 seconds.
No, so finally, in the land use section, I don't believe that our organization would support changes of combining C1 and C2, combining R1, 2, and 3. It allows too much flexibility. Thank you so much.
Thank you for your testimony. I have Lucy Berman. Good evening.
Good evening. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
I'll second the sound issue. Even as a young person, I can't hear anything back there. Anyway, my name is Lucy Berman, and I'm here today representing Central Providence Opportunities, a health equity zone. CPO-HIS is a collaborative of more than 60 local community-based organizations governed by a board of Central Providence residents and partners, and the following suggestions come directly from them and reflect sentiments that were expressed in a letter we sent to the council last month. I have hard copies of that letter if anybody wants one. With this plan, Providence has an opportunity to advance equitable zoning reform so that we can be a city that develops deeply affordable housing without displacement. We have seen numerous other cities around the country do this by releasing comprehensive plans that explicitly center racial equity. In Seattle, the city engaged formerly redline neighborhoods to design access to opportunity and displacement risk indices for their plan. In Minneapolis, the plan recognizes the city's history of inequitable policies that created racial disparities and spells out a vision that focuses on redressing that history. As it stands, this plan sees Providence falling behind. It does not acknowledge how the built environment perpetuates racial disparities and does not propose a plan of action to ameliorate and prevent harm to our communities of color.
30 seconds.
We appreciate the references to the city's anti-displacement and comprehensive housing strategy in this draft plan. However, we propose that you conduct a thorough racial equity analysis and incorporate racially equitable growth strategies throughout the plan. In the letter, we've provided a number of tools and resources you can use to do this. Even if a full equity analysis is not possible at this point, there are certain elements and policies you can incorporate so that racial equity is at the center of this plan. And we at CBO would be more than happy to help you do that. Thank you very
so
much for your time.
Thank you. Jose Coming. Good evening.
Hi, good evening. My name's Jose Comey, and I'm here as a concerned resident for Washington Park, Ward 10, near the port, which is an environmental and justice zone. So I just want to address some ongoing issues that we have with idling diesel trucks and vehicles in our residential neighborhoods. So diesel trucks obviously pose a big health risk to the community, particularly vulnerable groups. If you start thinking about children, the elderly, people who might have pre-existing conditions. So according to the EPA, diesel exhaust cause harmful pollutants of nitrogen oxides and particulate matters that can penetrate deep into the lungs. So prolonged exposure to these will increase respiratory issues and have also been led to cause asthma, bronchitis, and even cardiovascular diseases, which is the #1 reason for death in the United States. And you know, this isn't just a hypothetical problem. We start looking at the Parkinson's belt in Pittsburgh, where decades of industrial pollution have left behind with long-term health disparities for the residents of those areas. So that region has seen higher than average rates of health adversities. So our municipal laws don't sufficiently address the issues of idling trucks in the presence, for example, of diesel trucks in the residential area. So I'm urging the council to enable stricter enforcement for anti-idling regulations, clearer zoning laws to restrict diesel trucks in neighborhoods, and promoting greener transportation alternatives. You know, the health of our community should always be a priority, and I urge the council to take action.
20 seconds, Jose.
Yeah, and take the council to take closing this gap that exists, which I think it's a very common sense issue.
Thank you so much. Thank you for your testimony. Linda Perry.
Hello, and thank you for
Good evening,
this
Linda.
opportunity. My name is Linda Perry, and I'm a long-term resident of Washington Park. And I would like to echo the previous guy's, my neighbor, his issue with diesel fuel. With the expansion of the port, which is coming, as we all know, and the added industrial use on Allen's Avenue, there will be more diesel trucks. There are already. As a matter of fact, Sims 2, they have a car crusher, and I see loaded and unloaded tow trucks coming up and down my street, with or without dead cars. So that's new. So with the addition of all kinds of diesel trucks and the salt piles, which we would like to get rid of, we are an environmental justice area. There is no justice in our area. We live in an environmental justice zone, and it's just going to it's going to be a runaway train if we don't address it right now, right here, and we have control over our destiny. That would, in a perfect world,
30 seconds, Linda. Okay.
Yeah, in a perfect world, that's what would happen. So the port added their amendment into no more additional fossil fuels because they are expanding. And I would like to see in the comprehensive plan a community-based group that's part of the ports group. I forget the name of it, but you know what I mean.
Yes, I do.
So we've been fighting for that for years. We'd like to have 3 to 5 people as the owner of the port said they would allow that, but we need to have a say in how the growth is going to happen, especially because we breathe the air and we live in the shadows of the port. So in our environmental justice area, thank you.
Thank you, Lena. Thanks for all you do. Thank you.
Thanks for doing that.
Nina Marka. Hey. Good evening.
Good evening. Can everybody hear me? Because I couldn't hear much. You can't hear me? How about like this? Up, like this? Is this good? Okay.
That's better.
Thank you. So I represent the College Hill Neighborhood Association, Nina Markov. So we share deep concern with the residents across Providence that the comp plan's current approach of upzoning every neighborhood will encourage the destruction of that which makes our city a desirable place to live in. Its beautiful historic architecture, human scale, walkability, and greenery. We believe in smart and appropriate development and gentle densification, but have concerns about the potential unintended consequences of the draft plan and believe we need stronger guardrails and safeguards. Under the current plan, viable historic buildings are not sufficiently protected and will be torn down and replaced by poorly designed, overscaled, expensive alternatives that don't fit into the existing neighborhood by developers who do not have a stake in the residents' quality of life. While the comp plan talks about adaptive reuse and historic preservation, the fact remains that outside the historic districts, no protections are in place and any building may be demolished. And for example, the buildings that got a lot of press on between Hope and Brook on Angel were torn down and still the lots stand empty. Since under the new plan, many more such demolitions will become inevitable, we need rigorous design standards for new constructions so our beautiful historic buildings are not replaced by poorly designed new ones, like the ones we see down Brook Street. Residents of Providence care about preserving existing historic architectural landscape as well as increasing affordable housing. These two objectives need not and should not be pitted against each other. We can have both. Rather than PD's current approach, we'd like to direct new residential construction to areas that would benefit from development and where development would be appropriate, such as downtown existing office buildings, empty parking lots, raised lots, neglected properties, and so on.
Got about 20 seconds.
We've advocated an approach described in Chakrabarty's essay in the New York Times, How to Make Room for 1 Million New Yorkers, that Carrie Lang adapted for Providence in a recent Providence Eye article that I recommend you all read. Finally, the comp plan is relying on increased supply to create more affordable housing, but can we rely on the market to solve affordability problems? Some of the most dense cities are the least affordable. Why shouldn't Providence be a leader in generating a visionary and out-of-the-box solutions to the affordability crisis?
Thank you, Nina. Thank you so much. I appreciate your testimony. Lily Bogosian.
Good evening.
Good evening.
I guess it's evening.
Yes.
My name is Lily Bogosian, and I am the president of the Fox Point Neighborhood Association. I want to speak about Wickenden Street in particular, because over the past several years, Wickenden Street has become the subject of many city planning meetings. Widespread opposition to development on Wickenden Street has been expressed by multiple neighborhood associations and their residences throughout the city of Providence. Wickenden Street has seen declines and revivals over the last 3 centuries, with perhaps the greatest revival in the 1960s. And to this day, its funky, artistic vibe attracts tourists, students, and, of course, its residents alike. On the new comp plan, in the map, you will see that Wickenden Street is now designated as a high-density priority zone, which places all these old buildings and its history along this part of Wickenden Street in serious jeopardy. Multiple properties are being combined into massive structures with 6-story heights permitted by nominal accommodations granted to developers. While we are seeing thousands of city and state units being built around Fox Point alone,
30-second, Lily.
this is the one street whose history we treasure immediately and immensely. I-95 has created a new hub for housing, education, and commerce. However, city planners see the development of open lots surrounding Trader Joe's and its wide streetscapes as fair game for East Wickenden's narrow neighborhood thoroughfare.
Thank you, Lily. We appreciate your testimony.
Please consider reducing it back to its C2 zoning. Thank you.
Thank you. Alfred Jeffries.
Thank you for taking comments this evening.
Good evening. Yes.
My name is Alfred Jeffries. I'm a 42-year resident of South Elmwood. This deals with the 200-foot radius required for notification for certain building permits and projects and the like. I think you should be eliminating the measurements of streets, roadways, sidewalks, and the like, and calculating the 200-foot radius for notification as required for licenses, building permits, and otherwise. This makes the situations and the projects more inclusive for those who could be well affected by them, by such projects which would require those notifications. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Jeffries. Chris, 198 Hope Street.
Hi,
Good evening, sir.
Chris Tompkins. I've lived in Providence for 25 years. I'd like to propose a simple and elegant solution to the Providence housing crisis that's been ignored by the comprehensive plan. You could take 50% of all the long-term surface parking lots and vacant lots in the city of Providence, 50%, and you could solve the housing crisis in one fell swoop. That's all it takes. You don't have to disrupt any neighborhoods. You leave everybody alone, and you create massive amounts of housing by reviewing carefully the tax status of all these surface parking lots. Why does a healthcare worker who works for a hospital have a dedicated parking spot every day? You go down to Yale New Haven Hospital, they have a 6-story parking garage, which tells you which spaces are available. Meanwhile, you drive on 95, we look like a JV city. It looks terrible. The visual is terrible. You drive, you see these endless surface parking lots that the beautiful parts of the city aren't seen. But I don't know why this is so obvious. Instead of having the highest commercial tax rate in the United States, or close to it,
30 seconds,
let's have
Chris.
the highest tax rate for surface parking lots and vacant lots, and let's get them developed, let's get some housing going, and let's get some big buildings built so people can afford to live here. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. Carolyn Betensky, I believe. Good evening, Carolyn.
Good evening. Can everybody hear me? Okay. Greetings from the Jewelry District, where I've lived for the past 16 years and which has become unrecognizable with buildings going up out of all scale with what was there, what is there, it's cray-cray. So I just want to say, at the risk of sounding a little impolite, that this, I want to talk about the zoning, about the upzoning, the change of zoning, and when I read it over, it seems that it's not a comprehensive plan to develop affordable housing. I know that's not its only purpose, and people have spoken very eloquently to lots of issues with, other issues with the plan. But what strikes me is that it's not so much a comprehensive plan to develop affordable housing. What it is a comprehensive and irrevocable invitation to developers to build as much upscale housing as they can get money for, and more, because some of it will just remain empty. It's not going to trickle down, right? And we've heard of pink washing and greenwashing, and I fear that some of what I've read, with all due respect to the people who came up with the plan, is kind of public housing washing. We desperately need affordable housing in this city.
30-second, Carolyn.
I'm almost done.
Okay.
But I'm afraid that there's not enough thought put into that aspect, and there is lots of thought put into the irrevocable invitation to invest in properties in Providence, and the place is going to become unrecognizable like the Jewelry District already is, and I am done. Thank you.
Thank you. Jennifer from Pratt Street.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I enthusiastically support Providence Preservation Society's September statement on the proposed comp plan. In part, they note positively that the plan includes preservation, high-quality urban design, and adaptive reuse statements. We live in a special city, recognized regionally and nationally as a gem. To protect the city's unique character, we citizens must work together to ensure that high-quality design be top of mind in all planning review decisions. Good design does not always mean costly construction. I agree that we need additional living spaces at all income levels for our residents, but I am particularly concerned that the plan does not yet include details on how heightened design review of new and modified structures will be accomplished. I request that the plan include that additional design expertise be organized and assigned responsibilities to increase the hard-working planning department's current design review capacities. Thank you.
Thank you. Toby Ayers. Good evening.
Good evening. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. My name is Toby Ayers, and I wanted to speak to express concerns about the draft comprehensive plan, specifically around its potential effects on affordable housing. I was concerned when I read it that the proposed plan appears to prioritize large-scale development over adaptive reuse and human-scaled neighborhoods, and that it does not adequately protect vulnerable existing housing stock from demolition. This means residents will continue to see perfectly usable, potentially affordable houses demolished to erect large buildings with apartments and condominiums priced at market rate or above. We've seen this happen in Providence increasingly in the recent years across many neighborhoods, and it's exactly the opposite of what city residents need. Providence has at the same time abandoned and underutilized properties. Could you change the comprehensive plan to prioritize and incentivize adaptive reuse of existing housing stock, old mill buildings, downtown buildings, et cetera, as well as infill of vacant properties, parking lots, things like that, rather than prioritizing new development? We really need affordable housing in this city. I believe the plan as currently drafted would allow continued overbuilding of housing that only upper middle income and wealthy people can afford, with low and middle income people continuing to be priced out of our market.
30 seconds.
I do want to praise some things about the plan. There are some really good things in it, yet the important concerns about development, demolition, housing affordability, and managing density need to be better addressed. So I'm hoping that you can include greater protections for the existing housing stock and for our cultural and historic legacy by augmenting the design review process to prioritize human-scaled, affordable development, and by creating incentives for adaptive reuse of our old buildings and historic structures. And I thank you for your consideration and for your work on the comprehensive plan.
Thank you for your testimony. Thank you. Ian Westcott.
Hi, thank you for the opportunity to speak.
You're welcome.
My name is Ian Westcott. I live at 7 Lotus Place in Elmhurst. I grew up in a former farm in North Providence. I spent some time in bigger cities renting. Now I'm very lucky to say I own a home on a former orchard over by Gentian Avenue. I'm also proud to say I could take the bus 55 tonight, save Kennedy Plaza. When I travel up Admiral Street or Smith Street, I see parking lots that should be row houses and single-story storefronts that should be mixed-use apartment buildings. So when I look at this plan, frankly, I don't think it goes far enough in my part of the city and for upzoning main thoroughfares in general. I know there's a lot of concern for historic preservation, and I appreciate that, but history has a long timeline. I want everyone to remember that in 1940, just after my house was built on a former orchard, Providence had a population of over 250,000. That's 60,000 more than today. In the century since, we've mostly built highways and parking lots and gas stations, and I don't think the character or tax base of our city is any better for it. I've seen firsthand from my time in other cities that upzoning main streets doesn't impact the historic character of the neighborhoods behind them. It makes them more vibrant, more walkable, and more diverse, and that is more like they were a century ago, and that's what I want for my city. Thank you.
Thank you, Ian. Jennifer Brown. Good evening.
Good evening. Please excuse me, I didn't prepare something. I just
That's
have
okay.
always been a concerned citizen, and I will follow up. I sent a quick email before I left, and then we'll be more detailed.
Okay.
So I have a lot of points. My main point would be the sustainability, that I think the whole government, like from federal to state to the municipalities, are severely pressured, that you at the same time are growing housing stock and you're resolving or mitigating climate change. And you have to be extremely careful because there is a state mandate for the sustainability, for the climate change mitigation, but it's really not in sync with this plan, with prioritizing the large developments. And Greg Garrett's quote about top-down is not the way for economic growth. It is bottom-up. It shouldn't be the government so involved in people's lives. That's not what inspires our interaction and our vibrancy. I don't know why all of a sudden this would be something to immediately, you know, it just seems like everything is so much exponentially rushed. Like, for example, we had, when I was here 10 years ago, the arcade development was supposed to be $500 micro apartments with an included parking space. And that never happened that way, right? It's like $2,000 for...
30 seconds, Jen.
Excuse me. So, yes, I have a lot of points. Like, my rent went up 30% since I've been there the last 5 years. And so this is with all these huge high-rises. I think the skyline is gorgeous. I'm so proud to come home when that drive with all the the historic architecture is what brought this city back. That's what we really need to preserve. And I just reiterate everybody's reuse and smart. I just learned there's such a thing as sustainable architecture.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
You can always come back October 2nd,
Thank you.
5:30.
I will.
Thank you. I think it's Manza Brown.
Thank you so much for the opportunity.
Thank you.
I'm Marissa Brown. I'm the Executive
far away.
Director of Providence Preservation Society. So PPS released our statement and recommendations on our website. I'm just going to relay some of the highlights of where we are on this and some recommendations that we really urge because we think it would make the comp plan more equitable, more accountable, and better aligned with Providence's climate justice plan. So the first point for us is equity. Over the last 4 months, PPS has clearly stated concerns about how certain provisions of the plan exacerbate spatial inequalities in the city that have been the direct result of planning practices over the course of the last century in Providence. We elaborate on this in our statement, but the gist of what we're recommending is that including the National Register historic districts and landmarks to the comp plan's definition of historic districts, that is, adding nationally recognized historic districts to the city's local historic districts in the way that the comp plan defines historic districts would be much more equitable. Why? Because we know that the local historic districts tend to be in the wealthier and whiter and more privileged neighborhoods in Providence. So we see the fact that the National Register historic districts are left out as an equity problem. Wards that would be impacted by this include wards 1, 2, 3, 4, 9, 12, 13, and 14. We have some language that's very specific to wards 11, 12, and 13, where we see upzoning to R4 in neighborhoods that are National Register historic districts. But I want to move quickly, so I'll just jump on a couple of our other points. Accountability and community input. The planning department did an amazing job of holding over 80 community engagement sessions over the course of this process. We think that the plan needs to include a short summary of the feedback that was offered there and the resulting changes at the end of every chapter. It is really important to allow community members to understand where and whether their input registered. And I would say that's a very common practice in other plans.
22nd, Melissa.
Preservation, design, and adaptive reuse. These are things we've stated in the past. We think that the language around adaptive reuse has to be much, much stronger. We also feel strongly that the city should establish a design review committee, not to review every single project, no matter how small. There are constraints that you can put around what gets reviewed, but we see this again as an equity problem. Neighborhoods that are in local historic districts, downtown, get design review. It's not that it doesn't happen in Providence, it's that it happens in certain neighborhoods. The entire
Thank you, Melissa.
Thank you.
Thank you so
Thanks
much.
for the opportunity. You're welcome.
You're very welcome. Yeah. Next, I have Brooks from Lloyd Avenue. Good evening.
Good evening. Thank you for taking my testimony this evening. I oppose the ward zoning changes in Ward 2, the Wayland and Blackstone neighborhoods, from R1s and R2s to R3s in commercial areas, as it directly impacts my neighborhood, the character of a city I love, and the quality of life of the Providence residents. I am not against change, and I understand that our country is struggling with housing affordability stemming from post-pandemic inflation that never corrected, high mortgage interest rates, and low amounts of homes to purchase. The proposed plan does not adequately address these issues, rather makes the development of Ward 2 easier, removes our historic character, and strains our infrastructure. The proposed zoning changes could lead to increased traffic and infrastructure strain. High-density housing will result in parking challenges, traffic congestion, and additional pressure on local infrastructure. The suggestion from city planners to rely on more public transit is not practical, given Providence's lack of reliable transit. disruption of our neighborhood character. The introduction of more multifamily homes and row houses undermines the single-family home atmosphere, lowering property values and changing the lifestyles of those who have worked very hard to maintain the community. Providence is known for its preservation, collection of artifacts, architecture, rich history, and unique landmarks. The aim should be to maintain these areas, neighborhoods, and zones. Commercial development encroachment. Our current experiences with commercial zones differ by neighborhood and each have their own flair and vibe. Allowing for large changes could have a dramatic effect on what we consider beautiful, unique, and negatively impact the tourist activity in our city.
30 seconds.
Again, I want to reiterate that I am not opposed to change. I am opposed to the dramatic changes proposed which favor development and tax revenue generation, not equitable housing as claimed by city planners. High-cost renovations of new housing developments does not make our area equitable, rather opens the market to more high-priced housing. I agree with the statements of many from this evening that we would benefit from richer design reviews and stricter rules. Providence is a city filled with beauty, diversity, and incredible people. I believe we can do better with this plan for the residents, both current and future. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Vincent Bonanno.
Thank you. My name is Vincent Bonanno. Can anyone hear me? Because
Yes,
I
sir.
just spent an hour here, and I would say I'm hearing 30%. And I think it would be nice if the city council sat in those chairs for one session. It's ludicrous. I couldn't hear, and my hearing is fine. It isn't a matter of volume. Not 30% of the words would have spoken. It's almost as though someone suggested, no, they'll be able to hear if you put in a good system. And it's a disgrace. And it ought to be in a better room. It ought to be taken action. But I know that so little action is taken on these kinds of recommendations, but I think it's...
Go right ahead, Vincent.
There are so many things to talk about, but I'll just talk about one, Wickenden Street. I was at a session for Wickenden Street some months ago when about 60 people attended from the neighborhood. 50 of those people, whether they'd been natives of the born in the Fox Point area or people from all over the city, spoke. And some 50 of those people spoke of their great objection, the destruction of the character and the future of Wickenden Street. Immediately after a session, the planning chief had a group of people coaching them in what the developers could do to shoehorn in the property they wanted to build. It was so disliked by all the neighborhoods. So the idea that the planning had, and I heard Mr. The new man in planning for the city, speak Mulligan, who spoke about how this product of the this is going to be the product of what the citizens of Providence want. How many things are actionable? How many things that are listened to by so many people about the feelings of the city and the past of the city are actually listened to and are actionable? Do they write them down? Where do they show the action of how many things that have been spoken to? I've seen them come to the end of a meeting and have a vote before even listening to the testimony of people.
30 seconds, Vince. I'll give you an extra 30 seconds.
I'm sure you'd wish it were 10 seconds. But in any case,
your choice. It's
a very disappointing reality. This room and this idea of coming into a grand room like this, which is inaudible to the public. I'm asking people around me. They can't hear 30% of what you're saying. That's intolerable. You should be ashamed of yourselves. The council should ask to be sit in those lead for the next meeting and see if they can.
Thank you.
Okay.
We do take that into consideration, and we did have that problem, and this is a new system this year. It is a bad echo, but with each day we try to make better, and we try to improve the system. Middle name Jose from Exchange Street.
Thank you. The name's James Josie.
Good evening, sir.
The committee has my respect.
Speaking to the mic, please.
Okay?
There you
Is
go.
that good? Thank you. The committee has my respect and admiration from having to balance the needs of such a rich history with the needs of modern development. And I recognize that isn't easy, but talking with my councilman, I don't think that the balance between development and the needs of the ordinary citizens and the traditions of this city are being balanced effectively. And my question is this plan really ready? Is it really ready? I'm in Ward 1, and I'm not comfortable with the things I'm hearing, what will provide us protections from the forces of development, which should be provided effective guidance going forward from this. Thank you.
Thank you. Jones. Maria Jones. Maria Jones from Ives Street. Nope. Rachel Tucker.
Thank you. It's Rachel Turner. I'm from Ward 1, and I think a lot of people have already touched on many of the things that I wanted to touch on, but especially about social consciousness and development. The two go hand in hand, and they should be, you know, the community should have a very big say in how that happens. Also, I wanted to maybe mention that all of the development, maybe there should be some thought to the architects who are involved in the development, because all of the buildings are, you know, they look like the architects came from Costco or BJ's. You know, they look terrible. They just look terrible. But another Ward 1 problem that I would like to have addressed, if it can be addressed, is there's an incredible traffic problem in Ward 1. Two sides of the street parking, a truck can't even get down the street. Also, maybe a few of the traffic bumps to slow down people's speed would be a very good thing for lots and lots of the streets in Ward 1. And just in general, you know, try to figure out where all those cars can go, because there's no place for them to go, and there's only more and more and more and more and more coming. Anyway, thank you very much.
Thank you. Roberta Feather. Roberta. Okay. Zoe Mueller.
Hi there, can everyone hear me okay?
Yes, go ahead.
Great. My name is Zoe Mueller. I'm a resident of 260 President Ave in Ward 2. I have several comments that I'll share in written form, but tonight I just wanted to mention one thing in particular, because I think it's important for people to hear from residents of Ward 2 that are in support of the added density that is suggested around Wayland Square. I think it is incredibly sensible and long overdue change to the zoning ordinance that better reflects the patterns that exist there currently. There is a huge number of not only duplexes, but also small apartment buildings up to say 6, 8, 12 units that are present and have long time coexisted with the existing single family. They are equally as historic and equally as natural in that location, and I would like to see that move forward as something that is continued and valued and allowed to occur again at the numbers that we need in this city. And more specifically, I think it's important because historically Ward 2 has been an exclusionary, largely white, largely wealthy ward. And while I'm under no delusion that this alone will make the difference, I think it's an important step to open up this part of the city to the kind of density and the diversity of housing that we need in this city for all of us to live here and be comfortable and safe and stable in our own financial well-being. So to that end, I think it is an important first step, but not enough at this point. I would suggest that it should be extended to include a larger buffer around the identified zone that is immediately adjacent to Wayland Square, to include the blocks that surround it that have a large prevalence of historic duplex, two-family, two-unit
20
buildings.
seconds.
Thank you. I suggest that the city planning department undertake a similar nonconformity analysis as what they did within the existing R2 zones in order to introduce a new R2 zone that is specifically designed to support existing duplexes and single families coexisting as they have historically and should again.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Dylan Giles.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Yep. Thank you, Chair Espinal, and to the Ordinance Committee for hearing us tonight. And a special thank you to the planning staff for your hard work over the last year. At last week's presentation, Mr. Azar pointed out that the comp plan does not take the final step in fully removing minimum parking requirements in the zoning code. Today, we are asking you as leaders to meet the moment and take that step. 88 other cities and towns across the nation have taken the logical step to remove parking minimums from their zoning codes for residential development, including our neighbor, Central Falls. It is important to point out that taking this step will not eliminate all new off-street parking entirely. Rather, it enables the market to determine how much parking is needed and to adapt to varying degrees of transportation access in different neighborhoods, while increasing access to housing in the process. As my friend and fellow cool name haver, Dylan Conley, recently put it to me, not building parking pays off forever. Requiring a baseline level of parking reduces the amount of housing that can be built in a given project. The amount of housing units in a project may need to be reduced to cover the cost of underground parking, or the required amount of space for a surface lot can reduce the amount of space given for a building that houses people. We and many of our allies who you are hearing from tonight and will hear from work every single day toward achieving a transportation network that enables youth, families, professionals, and older folks to move around Providence without a car. Along with our legislative allies, we are fighting tirelessly at the state level to save RIPTA. In Providence, the Safe Streets for All network projects will bring in noticeable improvements to our urban trail network across the city. Change may be slow, but it is happening. We cannot continue to make permanent solutions to temporary problems.
30 seconds, Dylan.
Thank you. As our transportation systems change, our land use decisions must change along with them. The days where everyone who moves to Providence and brings their car are behind us. And we should meet the moment now and take decisive action while the opportunity is in front of us. Thank you.
Thank you. Rachel from Power Street. Good evening.
Good evening. I'm a longtime resident of Ward 1 in Providence, having lived here for 40 years. I want to comment on what is wonderful about living here and what I've seen recently, and why I think it is important that the city consider how and where development should occur. My concerns are for all the R1 and R2 areas, not just my own, but I live in Ward 1 and I can speak only to what the needs are to be preserved, and how carefully the city officials should be working on a plan that likely will destroy the fabric of this neighborhood. What we value in this city is the historic quality of the neighborhood, which contains many, many houses and blocks that are not in the historic district that are over 75 to 100 years old. The scale of the houses, the trees, the narrow streets not only make it bright and relatively quiet, but it promotes a walkable neighborhood, is charming in its destination for all types of visitors because of the large number of walkable, beautiful blocks, even in the areas with very modest homes, is the feel of the city. Long shadows of tall structures do not loom over pedestrians as they walk in their neighborhood stores, their university classes, or downtown to their jobs. It has an irreplaceable quality that, once ruined by oversized, poorly designed structures conceived by the developers who are only interested in how much money they can extract from their investment, will be gone forever. One thing that the city cannot do is build an old neighborhood or an historic house. It can only be preserved with careful thought and planning. I don't think the plan as proposed, with its wholesale uptick of each residential and commercial area,
30
serves
seconds,
residents
Rachel.
rather than developers and value extractors. It will not result in affordable housing in Ward 1 because developers will want to maximize their return in this part of the city. I've witnessed the destruction of the section of our city firsthand. The proposed oversized apartment buildings on Wickenden, the oversized buildings on Waterman Street, the secret and shocking destruction of old houses on Water Street, and the oversized imposing dorms Brown University recently completed. The new plan does not seek to mitigate wanton destruction of our neighborhoods, but rather it will enhance it. We need
Thank you. Thank you so much. Sarah from Medway Street. That's all right. Good evening, Sarah.
Hello, good evening. I'm Sarah Gleason, and I've lived 50 years in Fox Point, and more recently in Medway Place near Wayland Square. So I've seen quite a bit of what's been happening to housing in this area. In recent years, there's been an increase in destruction of perfectly good houses, some of them historic, and the construction or proposed construction of outsized, shoddy buildings not designed to address the affordable housing needs, but rather to house students and transients. None of the new construction has had adequate parking included, and there's going to be a horrendous situation off of Gano Street, on Wickenden Street, and so on when these are occupied buildings. There's nothing in the comprehensive plan that's addressing adequately the need for affordable housing. And in fact, the new provisions are going to hasten this process of destruction of good housing, construction of housing that's not contributing to solving our problems. Providence has many neighborhoods where existing buildings that are already part of the fabric of the city
30 seconds, Sarah.
could be rehabbed for housing for all income levels. So I think this should be a priority in the comprehensive plan, and I would like to see the acceptance of the plan delayed till this is addressed. Thank you.
Thank you. So that was the last speaker on this sheet. City Sergeant, do we have anybody else that signed up? Dylan Conley. Good evening, Mr. Conley.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, honorable members of the Providence City Council. Thank you for the chance to address you this evening. The first quick note I wanted to make is if the policy of this council is to increase gentrification in the city, the number one tool you can use is by expanding historic districts. I can prove that to you. If you just sit back and think about what are the most gentrified or the fastest gentrifying neighborhoods in the city, and then pull up a map of historic districts in the city, they're the same place. So that's a really important consideration if we're trying to address the housing crisis. Additionally, the C1 to C2 merger is not an up zone for housing, it is a down zone. It increases setbacks across the building footprint, which is a loss of square footage of 4 stories in all locations. So the C1 to C2 merger is a down zone for housing. Additionally, I think conceptually it's important to recognize that development is a cost per square foot to build versus rent per square foot in income. So cost per square foot to build includes site acquisition. In a city like ours, which is completely built out, it doesn't matter how many parcels you say can be built additional units. It has to be worth tearing the building down. I think there's a fear about tearing buildings down. That's illogical. You're not going to buy a 2-family for $1 million and then tear it down, right? So what you're just going to see is an increase in units within existing structures. You're not going to quadruple the density. You're going to increase the density by 1 or 2 units.
30 seconds.
That increase in rent doesn't justify tearing down an existing structure. So your R2 to R3 increases will see very little increase in demolition, but your HDC increases will see a significant increase in gentrification. Thank you.
Thank you. Julissa Arce.
Good evening,
Good evening.
Chair. Good evening, members of the Ordinance Committee. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak before you tonight. I know you have a very long list of public comment, so I'll keep it short. First and foremost, I would just like to say that I am in favor and in support of all the land use changes that you have before you in the comprehensive plan, specifically for the designation change from low density residential to medium in the Ward 6. And so 100%, I just want to state that I am in favor of this designation change. Secondly, I would just like to say on behalf of the Green and Complete Streets Advisory Council that I support the proposed changes that are included as part of the addendum to the comprehensive plan for the mobility section, specifically for objectives M2, M4, and M5. I believe that these are crucial for the pedestrians and different bicyclists here in the city of Providence as we continue to grow in development and continue to increase housing here in the city. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Next is Paul Flynn.
Good evening.
Good evening.
I'm Paul Flynn. I've lived in Ward 1 for 20 years, and I love this city. And what I love about this city, what I think there is to love about this city is its people. A city without its people is just a museum. It's the labor that people do that makes the city great. So thank you to the council for listening, for taking your time to consider what the people have to say. And what I'm here to encourage you to think about in terms of the comp plan is housing abundance. That means not just enough housing, but more than enough housing. There have been 3 groups in particular that I think have contributed to making Providence a great city in the last century: working class people, migrants, and artists. And all of those groups need abundant housing. Over the last 10 years, rents have skyrocketed, and they've skyrocketed because we haven't been building enough housing. And that's what we need to make sure we do in the next comp plan. I urge you to improve it and to expand it, to reduce setbacks, to reduce lot sizes, to increase upzoning throughout the city, even in wealthy neighborhoods like Ward 1. And I want to tell you that we really haven't been doing enough. After he passed pro-housing legislation, in remarks, Speaker Shikarchi indicated that the largest number of permits issued in this state was in Warwick, a city half our size. We should not be losing out to Warwick in permitting new housing. We need more housing.
20 seconds, Paul.
I really encourage you to keep that in mind. As a renter, I'm someone who depends upon new housing being built, more housing being built, to keep my rents affordable and to keep me living in Providence. It's a wonderful city. I love it here. I don't want to leave. I will be priced out if we don't build more housing.
Thank you. Thank you. Melinda Rainsberger. Good evening.
Good evening. Thank you very much. I just want to talk a little bit about the history of things. I live in an 110-year-old house that is considered neither historic or preservable because it's a multifamily unit that was built around when all the rest were. I'm really in favor of building more things like that, denser housing, less parking minimums, kind of getting back to the way Providence used to be, actually. It is said that history favors the bold. It's bold to build communities. It's bold to build things that people can use. It's bold to build a world where artists and the people that have made this city great can still live here. And so while you're considering the comp plan, I really want you to think about who we're favoring when we use the words history, when we use the words preservation. If we only let people that own million-dollar, multi-million-dollar mansions that are single-family homes determine the history and the future of this city, it's not bold, it's not preserving anything except for a very few amount of people, and Providence won't look like it does now. It will look very, very different because all the good people, all the cool people will be gone. And so that's what I came here to say. Reduce parking minimums, build more housing, make Providence awesome, and it will be awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Danielle Morris.
Good evening, committee members. My name is Daniel Morris. I live in the Hope neighborhood behind the Rochambeau Library. I'm here today to speak in favor of the comp plan as it is. The comp plan across various sections of the city proposes upgrading R2 to R3 sections, including by me on the east side, and some other sections around the Elmhurst or northern section around Wanskuck. I live in a triple decker. As a renter, I have mostly lived in triple deckers. Because I do, my rent is cheaper. If I lived in a single family home or a double decker, my rent would be more expensive. But because I live in a multifamily unit, I am able to split the costs with more residents. Therefore, I can afford to live. By preventing the construction of more triple deckers or other denser housing, we increase rental costs for residents like me. And we need to keep in mind, again, that Providence is 60% renter. They are me. They're not homeowners, they are me. By also increasing the density of neighborhoods, we also make them safer. Because I have neighbors, I have people to watch my stuff. I have people I can be in contact with if anything should go wrong, if there's an emergency in the home. I have several phone numbers in the building I live in that I can contact. Beyond that, Providence also at one point had a population of 250,000. Our mayor has made some brief comments about returning us to that number.
30 seconds, Dan.
And we can, but we can only do that with increased zoning. Anytime this city or any group prevents construction of more housing, you are harming me financially. You are preventing me from affording rent. You're preventing me from affording utilities. You're preventing me from affording groceries. By preventing any new construction, you are actively harming me. We need to upzone more. R3s are great for the city. They're not that dense. And the more we build, the more economically equitable we can make our city for renters like myself. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we had Nadine Kawa.
Hi, thanks for having me. Sorry for having the weird name.
Good evening.
Oh, sorry. All right, let me just get into it. So I'm a homeowner and I live in Federal Hill, beautiful Federal Hill. Past year, home value has shot up incredibly, which is like amazing for me if I'm a homeowner. Not so amazing if my kids ever want to afford to live in Providence unless they become hedge fund managers. And it doesn't take like a degree in mathematics to see that these fast increasing housing prices are like crippling for wannabe homeowners and perhaps like existing homeowners. So the solution to like the housing crisis is simply increase your housing stock. Like I believe that it's simple as that. And I'm here to speak in favor of upzoning, in favor of transit-oriented development, basically into making Providence accommodating for more people. And I do want to talk about the fear of greedy developers coming in, just tearing apart neighborhoods, evicting everybody's grandmas. And I don't see any solution, like any proposition for like socially owned housing, some communist revolution, like that's not on the table. So the only solution is to have more housing. And I think it just makes sense that if you want somebody to build a house or an apartment for you, you pay them for their services. So that being said, I want to conclude by saying that cities change, people change, cities evolve. This is not, if Roger Williams saw Providence today, it'd be unrecognizable. And I do expect it to change over the years, and that's just normal. That's just how cities are, in my opinion.
20 seconds.
I'm done. Thank you for having me.
Well, thank you so much for your testimony. Thank you. Next, we have Will Tower.
Hi, my name is Will Tower. I live at 62 Moore Street. I want to speak broadly in favor of the comprehensive plan's provisions, upzoning various parts of the city. I think we are in the midst of a housing crisis, and we can solve that by making it legal and easy to build much more housing. Thank you. I also would like to add my name into the pot of people telling you to please upgrade the sound system, because it is very bad back there.
Thank you. Cameron Lafreniere, Butler Avenue.
Hi, I'm Cameron Lafreniere. I live in Ward 1 in Wayland Square. I'd just like to thank the City Council for its time and to meet the moment in this very critical hour in our state and our country's history. As we stated, rent's rising higher here than anywhere. Rent has doubled in Providence in the past 5 years alone. The American dream is dead in Providence. I'm someone that went to URI. I've lived here my entire life. My entire family is given to public service. My grandfather was the major in the state police, so was my uncle. My mother was an attorney in family court down in Garrahy 20 years ago. All of them, and even people making half of that, maybe a quarter of that, could afford to at least live in this state. That is no longer the case for any of my siblings. Many have left. 100,000 people left the state of Massachusetts last year, and the principal reason was housing affordability. Upzoning leads to better transit, affordability, lower rates of displacement, as proven by the House of Urban, the U.S. HUD Department, and lower rates of lower rents lead to lower displacement. I would love to have the state of Rhode Island, as we've talked about potentially, being a housing builder, unfortunately, no one here, I think, has the power to do that or change that. We live in a capitalist housing market where existing landlords benefit from the status quo. My own landlord has a 3% or 5% increase every single year. I'll tell you, if the homeowners of this state had a 5% increase on their mortgage every year, there would be riots in the street. But that is the best that we can do. And so I think
30 seconds.
Yeah, I think the best thing we can do is support the gentle density and transit-oriented development that is currently in the comprehensive plan. It is the same things that Austin, Minneapolis have done to actually get prices down in their city. The best thing we can do is support young people who want to invest in the state like me and potentially become entrepreneurs one day. We need housing because we need a brain gain, not a brain drain. And we need 27,000 units are needed to stabilize prices alone, according to former Housing Secretary Stephen Pryor. So I want us to build housing, and I support this plan. Thank you.
Thank you, Cameron. Next, we have Christian Rosehard.
Thank you, members of the council. I
Good
appreciate
evening.
the opportunity to speak. My name is Christian Roseland. I live at 842 Hope Street on the east side of Providence, and I'm a member of the steering committee of the Providence Urbanist Network. I want to thank you for your work on this plan. I want to thank you for your support of increased density and increased housing. I know that for some of you, it's taken some time to come around to this and to realize that this is what we have to do, but we have to do it. And for two reasons. One, we're in the middle of a severe housing crisis with rents doubling in 3 years. And if we want to talk about equity, this is the real equity issue in this city. This is the issue that affects low-income, brown, black, and white people. Also, we cannot meet state or national climate targets without reducing the amount that people have to drive, and that means more density. The problem here is really simple. We did not build enough, and one of the reasons that we have not built enough is restrictive zoning. This is a supply and demand problem, and we need more housing at every income level. The only way to fix this is by allowing more density and more housing and removing the barriers to building housing, as envisioned in this plan, and not erecting new barriers, as you have been asked to do by some members of the public who oppose this plan. I want to note that there have been some disingenuous arguments made by those people who, NIMBYs, frankly, who have no credible solution to the housing crisis. The credible solution to the housing crisis is before you in the form of this plan, which was very carefully thought out, which includes restrictions on height, by the way, in all of the different zones that are being proposed. It takes character to evolve one's position. It takes character to come around and to see that something new is needed. And I encourage you to do that.
Christian, 30 seconds.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Next is Ian Saxon. Good evening.
Members of the council, thank you for your service. You don't get thanked enough. Too often you get greeted by people there to complain about something wrong. I'm a resident of Fox Point on Wickenden Street. I'm a proud supporter of the comprehensive plan. Like the majority of residents of Fox Point, the neighborhood association does not speak for me, quite the contrary. Instead, what I would like to talk about for a moment is character. The character of our city for almost 400 years has been a place welcoming to refugees and strivers and immigrants and creatives. And if we are going to protect and continue the character of this city we love so much, growing our housing supply is a necessary first step. The opponents of this plan, if their solutions to the housing crisis had worked, we wouldn't be here because we've tried that already. It didn't work. It's like listening to a chain smoker who says, I want to get healthy, but not like that. Don't make me stop, okay? Housing, increasing our housing supply, it will not solve all of our problems, but our problems are not solvable unless we upzone the city, as outlined in the comprehensive plan. as a necessary first step. And quite frankly, the demagoguing about what if a developer makes money, what if a college student moves next door to me, what if somebody rich from Boston moves in here and buys a house, these are distractions, usually by the comfortable, already happy with the status quo, to try and distract us from the necessary solutions, which you are all well aware of.
20 seconds.
And I thank you for your time.
No, you got 20 seconds. Liza Birkin.
Hello, everyone.
Good
Thank
evening.
you. I think most of you know me. I'm Liza Birkin. I'm the lead organizer of the Providence Streets Coalition. Surprise, I'm going to talk to you about transportation. First, I'm going to start with the blanket statement. Providence needs more homes. Just today, we were third in the nation for rent increases. People want to move here because we're amazing. Like, everyone knows this, obviously. And people need to be able to stay here, and people need to be able to move here. And I think that we want to invite more people into the city. We want more people in our restaurants. We want more people having fun at our parks, going to shows, doing stuff. But we don't necessarily want more cars, right? That's the thing everyone is afraid of. More traffic, more pollution, more stress getting around, can't find a parking spot, more carbon emissions. We need to find ways to invite more humans and not more cars. A really simple way to do this is by eliminating parking minimums, as 88 other cities around the US have done. And you all received a letter from me co-signed by 20 signatories representing housing groups, transportation groups, climate groups. You all have the letter in front of you. I'm very happy to speak to it later. But I just want to talk to you about the thing that radicalized me. And that was a story in the Boston Globe about Foster Forward. This is a group that helps youth aging out of the foster care system find housing and get on their feet.
30 seconds, Liza. All right.
And in Pawtucket, there was a four-unit building that they had an illegal attic apartment that could have housed a youth member, but surprise, the requirement, they had to have 4 parking spots in the yard, and they only had 3. So that apartment could not be livable because of the mandatory parking requirement. This is antiquated. This is no longer needed. We can allow for more choices. We also obviously have to save RIPTA at the same time, and the City Council has been an amazing ally to transit riders. Thank you, City Council.
Thank you,
we need
Liza.
you in the upcoming session. So let's work together to increase our choices. More people, fewer cars. Thank you.
Thank you. Corey Penta. Corey. Okay. Then I have 211 Carlton Street. I cannot make out the name, so it's a signature. But the address is 211 Carlton Street. Is it? Okay. Diego from Adelaide. Mr. Diego.
You should bring the baby, just saying.
I thought about it. Hi, everyone. Thank
Hello.
you for having us. I'm hoping that after my remarks, either no one will clap or everyone will clap like once or twice.
All right.
I'm a homeowner in a historic district. I've lived in many neighborhoods across the city for 10 years. I'm in favor of the plan as it stands, due particularly to the upzoning and eliminating the parking minimum. Great cities are dense, diverse, and walkable, and that's why I love the neighborhood that I live in. But I do agree with many issues presented by those opposed. It does make some sense to build on an empty parking lot as opposed to destroying something and then rebuilding again. So I urge those who oppose to make a radical concession. For example, we want better historic protections, and we can live with no R1 anywhere. There's gonna have to be some exchange. There's gonna have to be some exchange, and I think we can do that. But for me, the most important thing, for my day job, I work as a clinical social worker in a homeless shelter. And I want to tell you, shout out social workers, I want to tell you, right now, there are pregnant women and children who are homeless, living in tents in Providence. That's a fact. They used to be able to afford their rents. That, to me, is an affront to the character of the city, and I urge us to think of them first before we think about any specific neighborhood or constituency. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Okay, next is Catherine Taylor.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Thank you so much for having us all here to testify. I'm Catherine Taylor. I am the AARP Rhode Island State Director, and we advocate to empower people to choose how we live as we age. And we also advocate for cities and towns that are great for people of all ages, where we can thrive with affordable and accessible housing, good transportation, walkability, green spaces, and access to community amenities. There's so much in this draft plan that we are for, and I just want to tick down briefly what they are. Just the ability to build an accessory dwelling unit throughout the state. That's what we call naturally occurring affordable housing, where you can house an older adult and a fixed income, a caregiver, or a young adult just starting out. We are very excited about the expanding our R4 zone, combining the R2 and R3 zones into single, more flexible missing middle, medium density zone, and allowing more building types in our R1 district, like row houses and cluster development, which allow more gentle density at scale and style of the neighborhood. One way to build more support around that may be to expand the restriction on students, 3 to a house throughout the city, so something to perhaps consider. We are excited about the potential to reintroduce neighborhood shops and services with the paving the way through the comprehensive plan. On reducing the car parking mandatory minimums, we really support what the plan says, that we will get rid of more minimums, if not abolish them across the city outright. Right there, we do urge a little bit of reserving some room for judgment there, because there's some people, like people with extreme disabilities, who may need a car. So just keep an eye on that.
Got about
And then in the
15 seconds.
Thanks, sir. And the mobility chapter, putting roads on diets, the several new strategies that align with this view of narrowing lane sizes to lower speeds, standardizing green and complete streets design, et cetera. We're all for it. So thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you, Catherine. And last but not least, we have Erin from Angel Street. Good evening.
Good evening. Can you hear me all right?
Yes.
Councillors, my name is Eric Verneby. I live in Ward 2. The comprehensive plan provides a unique opportunity to create our legacy for Providence 25, 50 years from now. One of the things I enjoy about Providence is the public access to green spaces along waterways and greenways. Strolling and laughing with family, running with friends, watching families enjoy themselves. The comprehensive plan can provide a stronger guiding hand to promote green public spaces and green transits to guard against kind of the tragedy of the commons. In addition to Section 7, PS3, I propose that the plan contain the following 4 requirements for all new or brownfield commercial and residential R4+ developments. Provide 1, continuous unrestricted greenway access along waterways for walking, biking, and recreational public use. 2, build bike and walking lanes that are continuous and safely protected from motorized traffic to enable green commuting access and alternatives. 3, identify and designate current public green spaces and green transit in the zoning map, including by virtue of current use, like the green spaces adjacent to the downtown pedestrian bridge. 4, institute a design review process for both historic districts as well as for public green spaces and green transit adjacent to waterways, greenways, and new commercial developments. This is to protect existing and to promote creation of new public green spaces, like on parking lots, like we heard before.
30 seconds.
These provisions for promoting public green spaces and green transit, in addition to historic districts, are not just good for the people of Providence. Adopting these amendments would also be good for long-term business and would support the creation of a city that continues to be a magnet for talent for decades to come. Councillors, thank you for listening.
Thank you. Before I call on the next gentleman, the City Sergeant, do we have anybody else? Did anybody have an opportunity to speak on this? So that's going to be it? Thank you. It needs to be last. Okay, so how many people do we have here that have not spoken yet? That's one. Mike Gazzaco, I have you on the list. So we have 2 people, right? So why don't you come on up for 3 for 1 minute each. Come on up. And when you come up, just state your name and address for the record. One after, well. So we'll do 1 minute. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Espinal. I see my councilman here, Mr. Gonzalez. Mr. Gonzalez.
Speaking to the mic, get the mic a little closer to you.
My name is Barry Preston. I'm a resident of Providence for 49 years, and my company, the Army Revival Company, has been building affordable housing in the city for 38 years. The mayor recently noted that people are moving into Providence because they like it because of its distinctive historic character. As you know, the city was 250,000 people in 1930. It's now 190, so there's room for 60,000 more people in the city without building a single new building. So there are many places in this city, as have been pointed out, where new construction could take place. Parking lots, vacant lots, and buildings that could be repurposed. So, and not, instead of building new construction in the middle of established, historic, and settled neighborhoods. So I would urge your planning department to go back to their task and find those particular places and prioritize them for new construction.
Thank you so much.
There seems to be a fantasy in the plan that people don't need, with jobs, don't need parking. So despite the comments that have been made, those people that don't need parking are generally students. And so what the plan does is prioritize the building of more student housing. I would submit that that's not the housing that we need for the people that are moving into Providence.
Thank you so much. Thank you for your testimony. Come on over. Good evening. Just state your name and address for the record, please.
Good evening, Council. My name is Kelly Yen. I am a resident on Arnold Street. And this year I just graduated from college and I'm now living and working in Providence. And I know a lot of my friends would also love to stay in Providence. And we think that for Providence to truly live up to its name of the creative capital, it should strive to be affordable for young professionals and young artists who are looking to rent studios, rent homes, rent apartments. And so would really support any zoning or developments that could encourage more density and housing. Thank you.
Thank you. And I believe we have one more person, right? There was 3 people that raised their hands. All right, being that there's no one else, Mike Gazzaco from City Planning Commission, come on up.
Well, good evening, everyone. It's different to be sitting on this side, and usually you guys are in front of us at a hearing about something that's happening in your district. I have to say, I've heard a lot of the same comments that we've heard at informational sessions, at other City Plan Commission hearings, while vetting this document, and I feel pretty strongly that what you have in front of you is still the best effort that we could put forward. I really, really strongly support the document that was drafted, that came out of the multiple years long effort. Not one person has said that they didn't get a chance to participate or learn about it, and many of the comments you've heard are only a small fraction tonight of the comments that were taken into consideration to draft this plan as you're reading it and reviewing it now. So I implore you to take these to heart. Tim has a lot of detail of the kind of comments and the things that were spoken about in all of these offline sessions as well. There was a lot of community engagement, and there was a lot of feedback, and I appreciate all of you here tonight listening to it and reading through the document with a fine-tooth comb. I know there were a few things that I would, if I were sitting somewhere else, actually, if I was sitting over there, I would probably like to respond to, but I know that Bob Azar will have that handily controlled, because there were a few things that jumped out as inaccurate or not with the intent of the plan. But I do think that overall, I think we did a pretty good job of getting it right. I think it's the right path for the city, the right document for the moment. It addresses a lot of the housing issues that we see. I think it's interesting that now we're talking more about reducing parking minimums or eliminating parking minimums, and I think that's probably in line with the goals of this plan as well. But I would also be careful to have something to do with impervious coverage as well, not just allowing the building footprint to expand, but also increasing impervious coverage when we do that, because while building denser housing is a much more green type of housing, because the more people you put on a parcel, the better. You build a multifamily house, much more environmentally sound than a single family house in its same footprint. We also need somewhere for the stormwater to go. So surface parking lots and reducing impervious coverage is a huge part of that environmental justice plan that you've been hearing so much about. So I want to thank you all again, and it's just really nice to sit here and hear all of this feedback, and thank you for taking the time to do it.
Thank you, Mike. Thanks for your input and all your work in this very important plan. And I will end with Mr. Bob Azar, who's been taking notes from all the comments, and he'll give us a summary. Mr. Azar.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, it's been quite an interesting evening, and I appreciate all of the comments that have been made tonight. I think I'm going to withhold on really giving my impressions tonight. I think that we have a lot to absorb. I will say that the idea here is that we need to find a balance. Yes, we need to grow. Yes, we need to aggressively make more opportunities for housing, but we also need to preserve the place that we know and love. It's a real challenge. The city is dynamic. The city is always changing. Growth and development is always happening. You don't always get the growth exactly where you want it. But we have tried to create opportunities for housing at the same time we're trying to preserve the great character of the city. So we will certainly be busy over the next couple of weeks consolidating and brainstorming on what we may need, and we will be back with an amendment. Our intention is that we will announce and post any changes that we propose to bring to you before the next meeting, and anything that we propose to change will be presented in the context of the next hearing.
Thank you, Mr. Azar. Thank you so much for your input. With that, and again, that'll end it there, and we will be back here October 2nd So I'll entertain a motion to continue this meeting to October 2nd at 5:30 p.m.
So moved.
Motion is made by Councilor Peterson, and a second by Councilman Roy. All in favor, aye. Opposed, the ayes have it. So this meeting will be continued to October 2nd at 5:30. And before we adjourn, I'd like to acknowledge Council President Pro Tem who is here tonight. Thank you for being here with us. Madam Clerk, but being that there is no further business on the agenda, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. Motion is made by Councilor Royers and a second by Councilwoman Peterson. All in favor, aye. Opposed, the ayes have it. This meeting is adjourned. See you on October 2nd at 5:30. Thank you.